Hi, I'm Chris Rimble, and today I'm bringing you a deep dive into Elon Musk's Twitter feed. I'm focusing on Tesla in this video. I'm also going to do one on SpaceX and Neuralink. Let's get started. There's some really cool stuff in here. There's some overall themes when he's talking about Tesla that I really want to highlight. First of all, Giga Berlin is coming together very quickly, and that's exciting. It's the latest factory that Tesla is putting together. Their China factory went together fast. This one's coming together even faster. So this is pretty crucial. He says that Gigafactory is the product even more than the car. So if the product of Tesla is more so the factory than the car, then they intend, it sounds like, to build lots of factories, get really good at manufacturing technology, more so than just focusing on the end product, which the end product will be great if the process for building it is great. And if they're very good at putting together factories, they're going to be able to build them all over the place really quickly. It'll be interesting to see how they take those lessons to Austin, Texas, as that is their next Gigafactory. One of the things that I noticed going back to July 15 through August 20th, which is the time frame of these tweets, is that he talks a lot about the full self-driving and autopilot softwares. He says in a few months in production release, the program will be able to make lane changes on city streets. That's crazy. There's not a lot of room for error on city streets. And if you go back and watch the Model Y first-person view driving video that I have on my profile, you'll see that it will not change lanes on the city streets on autopilot. I tried to make it do it, but it will do it on the highway. So that's pretty cool. If it's navigating on autopilot and it will do lane changes, whew, that's really going to take some of the stress out of driving. Very cool. Here's another big one. This is a big, big deal. So Tesla has not done advertising so far, right? Have you ever seen an ad for Tesla? Exactly. But in a short conversation with Clean Technica, which is a electric vehicle and solar power blog, he says at some point we should probably do advertising as art/communication/entertainment and to support high quality media. So Tesla ads in the form of art, in the form of communication, in the form of entertainment, could be apps, could be games. That's pretty cool. That would be an awesome way to advertise. Imagine how many Teslas would sell if they started advertising. They've done none of that. Just their customers are the main source of people finding out about them. All right, so this one on the screen here is a big one. So this is where he talks about individualized mass transit is the future. Remember that. We're gonna see some more stuff in here. This is kind of a theme. Individualized mass transit is the future. What could individualized mass transit possibly look like? Here's another reference to the factory product. Giga Berlin will come together at an impossible seeming speed. The prefabricated construction method in Germany is extremely impressive. So if they are learning some manufacturing of the factory lessons in Berlin, then that's probably going to be carried around to the rest of the gigafactories that they use in the future. The prefabricated factory method. Eventually it'll get to the point where a Tesla factory will essentially show up on a container ship and go together very rapidly. This is a big deal here. He says Tesla is open to licensing software and supplying powertrains and batteries. We're just trying to accelerate sustainable energy, not crush competitors. So they're selling powertrains and batteries, that's motors and the drivetrain and the battery tech, because it's going to be better than everything else that's out there. And they're open to licensing software. If you're a Tesla investor, that's pretty important. Somebody asked him software as in autopilot, he says, sure. Whoa. So licensing the software for full self-driving, for autopilot, wow. That, as we will see, is a huge project. Just building that software is phenomenally difficult. So it should bring in a lot of revenue to be able to license that. Tesla has its hands in some interesting things. Sounds like he doesn't realize Tesla makes a vaccine machine for CureVac. So Bill Gates was saying that Elon doesn't really know anything about viruses and vaccines. He says, here's another shot about it. He says, we've been working on this for about 4 years, originally meant for rabies vaccine, but it can make pretty much anything that's an RNA sequence. So an RNA sequence is a biological strand of information. Critical path is completing human trials. So CureVac is a very, very interesting company that I don't really know much about, but they're about building these biological chains of information, and you can use those for vaccines. That's what vaccines are. It's just bioinformation in the form of RNA. Could be very, very, very profitable. I don't know enough about it to comment on it with any level of sophistication, though. It's highly likely there will be a smaller Cybertruck down the road. That's pretty cool. More and more products for Tesla. Here Elon talks about his share of the company. He says, over time, since we give all employees shares, my ownership is diluted automatically. From the first financing round where I owned 60% of Tesla to today at around 20% has declined by a factor of 3. So Elon is diluting himself to make sure that the employees get shares. It's amazing. Speaking of amazing, he says it will be amazing to see in operation. Biggest casting machine ever made. Will make rear body in a single piece, including crash rails. These cars are getting more and more sophisticated in the way that they're built. The Model Y has a single piece for something that on the Model 3 was 170 pieces, and that manufacturing expertise continues to improve. As he said, the factory is more so the product, and if the factory can make big chunks of the cars in one single piece at a time, then they'll be able to build better cars for less overhead, less labor cost, less robot maintenance, and faster. Wow. So getting better at manufacturing brings in a lot of value, takes away a lot of the costs out of the company, makes it more profitable to do it that way. We'll see more and more of that single piece casting, making a large chunk of a car at a time. Mark my words, we will. They're also building more power walls, which are the in-home batteries. That's cool. Increasing that. We'll see more of a focus on the decentralized power grid, which is Tesla Powerwalls and the solar. And that's going to really improve the reliability of people's electricity. It's going to be a nice quality of life improvement, especially for people in places like California, where millions of people are without power for quite a bit of time, in Tennessee, where we get storms that can knock out power for hundreds of thousands of people at once just because one little section of the grid got severely damaged. Back to full self-driving, he says it will come as a quantum leap because it's a fundamental architectural rewrite, not an incremental tweak. I drive the bleeding edge alpha build in my car personally, almost at 0 interventions between home and work. Limited public release in 6 to 10 weeks. Like, the excitement just keeps going up and up and up for me when I read this tweet. So FSD is full self-driving. It's going to be, he says, an entire quantum leap above what autopilot is right now. He personally drives the alpha build. Alpha is the version of software before beta. So it's the earliest rough draft of the software. Beta is next. And then the full release, the full version 1.0 and beyond. He says limited public release in 6 to 10 weeks for this. So this was in mid-August. So October, November, look for some crazy full self-driving improvements in the Teslas. It will not be considered full self-driving itself, even though it essentially will be. We still need regulatory approval for full self-driving and lots of tiny little corner cases solved, as we'll see in a second. But it will get better and better and better. He says almost 0 interventions between home and work. Wow. That's insane. And it's going to be driving around bumps and potholes when it's safe to do so. That's one of the big complaints about autopilot right now, is it'll just nail that pothole and you'll hit it hard and it can break your wheel or pop your tire. But they're going to have the computer start to identify the hazards on the road, and if it's safe, it will look around in full 360 degrees instantaneously in thousands of frames per second. Is it safe for me to avoid this? And then it will avoid it if so. That's really cool. Here he talks about wanting to do the electric vertical takeoff and landing supersonic aircraft, but he's too busy right now. That will be probably one of the next paradigms that Tesla gets into, where they will make aircraft, electric aircraft. The battery tech has to get there first, and they are the ones with the battery tech. The software tech has to get there. You can't be a pilot to ride in these things. It's just too cost prohibitive. There's not very many pilots out there. I myself am a pilot, and it takes a long time and a lot of dedication to become a pilot. And for a electric vertical takeoff and landing supersonic aircraft to exist, it probably basically needs to drive itself. And there's lots of drones that do that right now. This is something that's coming. He just is too busy to work on it right now. Dojo. Dojo is the Tesla computer. It is a supercomputer that, as I mentioned, there's a lot of random things that happen in the world that make it hard for full self-driving to be approved regulatory-wise. This is a computer to make that happen. So all the Tesla fleet out there is gathering data. It's coming into Tesla right now. And they're going to be doing even more of that with Dojo, which is their new computer system. Dojo will help write the full self-driving software. He mentions that it will take at least a year to get to version 1 of the Dojo. So don't expect full self-driving within a year, but we will see really, really, really advanced autopilot things before then. He says when somebody asks how long until regulatory approval on full self-driving, he says out of our hands, maybe 10 billion kilometers will be enough to convince regulators. And here's another reference to the electric airplane. This is a screenshot from Iron Man where he tells Tony Stark, I have an idea for an electric aircraft. So he is pretty obsessed with the idea of an electric vertical takeoff and landing aircraft. This one is a big deal. This one really caught my eye. Somebody posted a screenshot where it said that if you lease a Tesla in Canada, you can have the option to buy it at the end of the lease. That's actually pretty common with vehicles out there. But this isn't even about necessarily leasing or anything like that. This is about the value of the car after the lease. So listen to what he says here. That's an error in Canada. The lease payment is specifically lower than loan financing as Tesla expects to repossess the car. This is essentially a bet on residual value. If you believe residual value will rise, buy the car on a loan. If you think residual value will drop, then lease it. What he's saying without saying is that the Tesla is an appreciating asset. Appreciating asset. Now, how could it be an appreciating asset? How could it be worth more after leasing it for 3 years and not less? He confirms again, auto lane changes in city streets. Now, automatic lane changes in city streets. So go around, turning traffic, slower traffic, all that stuff. Changing lanes, get into the left lane because the right one's now turn lane only. That stuff is coming, and in a couple of months. That's crazy awesome. That will bring the stress of driving down even more. I love driving. To me, it's not stressful, but for a lot of people it is, and especially if they're texting or eating or trying to keep their kids in line, etc., that can create a hazardous environment that Tesla is seeking to make more safe. Some fun stuff where your car can play sounds outside of the car. There's a little speaker in the outside of Tesla's build, I think within the last year or so up to present. And he's adding a feature where there's a Rick and Morty reference, which is one of his favorite cartoons. I love the show as well. And it will play outside of the car. That's just one reason that people love Teslas, is they do silly stuff like that. Elevator music while you're driving around. How funny would that be? Let's talk about, just for a second, the concept of individualized mass transportation, because that was one of the most important things that I saw in the past month of tweets. If individualized mass transportation is Tesla's, then those are probably cars that are coming off lease partially, and the other vehicles that are performing the individualized mass transportation are also just owned by regular Tesla owners. But this could really be better than Uber and Lyft. How many times have you felt unsafe in an Uber or a Lyft? Pretty much most of the times with me. There have been some good drivers I've ridden with, yes, but I would say about 50% of the time I'm riding with someone who truly scares me at least once. And if full self-driving is good enough in the next year to 3 years, that would be the time frame I would suggest that full self-driving will be ready, then I would much rather ride in the back of a driverless car that is able to react much faster, see in all 360 degrees simultaneously, isn't trying to text, isn't getting distracted by phone calls, and is focused on just keeping me safe and getting me to my destination. I would way rather ride in that. And probably most people would as well once they understand how good the technology actually is and how much safer it is to ride in a full self-driving car than one driven by a human. So there will be, with the factory being a product of Tesla more so than the car, there will be so many Teslas on the road and so many full self-driving vehicles on the road so that you could summon a Tesla and ride to wherever you need to go and never even really need to own a vehicle. And that revenue is going to be going straight to Tesla because you'll pay Tesla for picking you up and dropping you off. There will also be people that own Teslas, but as an appreciating asset, because if your car is out driving people around while you're not using it, if you're able to just put it in a mode, okay, now go drive people, then that's making you money. That an Uber driver can make $100 plus during a day. And if your car is able to drive day and night and just consistently, let's say maybe you need it 20% of the time and the other 80% of the time it can be out there driving, there's just so much revenue that it could bring in. Over $100 a day. You could make easily $2,000 a month plus with your car out driving for you. And that's more than double the payment on a lot of Teslas too. That's pretty crazy. So I would expect one of their larger revenue streams to be the individualized mass transit of cars just being out there driving people around, and there being less and less of a need for people to actually own cars, especially in urban settings where everything is so densely packed. That really blew my mind, seeing that in the factories with a large piece stamping of vehicles, making big chunks of them at a time, and just getting really good at making the factories themselves. We are in the early stages of Tesla right now. We've seen the stock going parabolic lately. It's done some crazy things. It's doing a 5-to-1 split here in a few days, but we are still in very, very early Tesla. And that's not even to mention the other things like their RNA factory. So there's a lot to, I would say, for me personally, I am not going to put my money in savings in a bank account. I will exclusively be putting it in Tesla and have an order to buy on the next dip. So it's currently at all-time highs right now. I would not buy it at the moment, but on the next reasonable pullback, it's an all-in order. I see no better place to put my investment right now. But that's my thoughts on Tesla. I'm going to also make a video about SpaceX and about Neuralink as well from the Twitter deep dive, and I look forward to bringing that to you. I'm Chris Rimble. Thank you for watching. Like and subscribe.